Welcome to Staying United Methodist, sponsored by the Imagine Kentucky Methodism. Imagine Kentucky Methodism is a group of clergy and laity of the Kentucky Conference who envisioned a form of Kentucky Methodism that is welcoming to people of all skin colors, ages, genders, sexual orientations, cultures, abilities, and theologies within the United Methodist Church. I'm your host, Phil Hill, and today our guest is Reverend Junius Dotson, General Secretary and CEO of Discipleship Ministries for the United Methodist Church. Reverend Dotson was a part of the team of individuals who crafted the legislation called the Protocol of Reconciliation and Grace Through Separation. That legislation will be before the General Conference later in September. Reverend Dotson, we want to thank you for taking some time from your busy schedule to share with us about this important information.
Well, first of all, Phil, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you and your audience about the Protocol of Reconciliation and Grace Through Separation. Through pandemic, through protests of the summer, through this election season, it feels like we've just been bombarded with a lot of things. And yet, what's still on our agenda for the church as we think about the future of the church is who are we going to be as United Methodists, and how will we get past this ongoing conflict regarding the full participation of LGBTQ persons in the life of our church. And it was really after the 2019 Special Call General Conference where a group of persons really started mobilizing. But how can we get past this impasse? How can we have more meaningful and substantive type conversations? And recognizing kind of where we are, the late Bishop John Yamasu, who tragically passed this summer, it was so sad. But the late Bishop Yamasu invited several of us across the theological spectrum into a conversation. And the goal of the conversation was, hey, can we find a consensus on a future that will not do further harm to our church and, and to the body of Christ? And so from that conversation, even though we didn't agree on hardly anything that first time, there was an effort or a desire or invitation to say, hey, guys, keep talking, just keep working through this. And so, that was part of the impetus for the protocol. The uniqueness of that conversation was it was broad. It was initiated by Central Conference leaders, Bishop Yamasu, and there were another African bishop, Bishop Mande, and also Bishop Alstead was present. And it was really, the uniqueness of it was that it was broad, that it did include representatives from central conferences. And then, of course, as this group continued to meet, there was an addition of U.S. bishops, and then it evolved. It evolved into an invitation to be mediated. And it was mediated by the world-renowned Ken Feinberg. Ken Feinberg's presence really spoke to the urgent historical significance of these talks. Ken Feinberg had brokered the 9/11 victims compensation funds, the BP Deepwater Horizon disaster settlements. So he was the person kind of to help guiding this conversation. Of course, in any mediation, one of the foundational understandings of mediation is that no one side gets everything they want. That was important. And it was important to understand also the spirit in which we entered these conversations, because, even as persons are considering whether or not they support the protocol, the future of the church, I believe if we have those conversations in the same spirit, we'll continue to advance our mission together. What spirit am I talking about? The goal of these conversations was not to create winners or losers, right? The goal was to get to yes. And so in order to get to yes, everybody must be willing to give and take in order to get to yes in the midst of, all that separates us. And so what emerged out of this was protocol. And I want to be clear, there's no, protocol is not a plan, the protocol, and the best way to describe it, it is a mediated, structured, orderly way to achieve separation without doing further harm to the body. That's the best way that I can describe it. It acknowledges our differences. It acknowledges the impasse we're facing. It's an attempt to get us on mission. It's a recognition of our participation throughout history in systemic racism. It is a stated need of the need to respect one another and to care for one another and to help, each group reach its desired outcome. And so the protocol really was a clear and hope-filled process. Now, and I want to give people, you could get lost in the details, but no, it's a clear process. It's a hope-filled process that enables the United Methodist Church to continue while honoring and respecting those who believe, based on their strong convictions, that they must separate in order to live out their convictions with integrity. And so the protocol charts a new path forward for us while accommodating new denominational expressions. It provides a path that moves a post-separation UMC beyond hurtful and exclusionary language. It is an agreement that does not cause further harm, again, to our church. And in a post-separation UMC, the language around same-sex marriages will be removed from the discipline. Pastors will determine who they marry, conferences determine who they're ordained, and bishops assign pastors who are the best fit for a congregation. It seems to me that this is our best opportunity to hold churches together. So just a real brief outline of kind of what is contained in the protocol. Again, the United Methodist Church stays intact. If an annual conference or a local church wishes to remain in the United Methodist Church, there's nothing they have to do. If there are persons who want to leave and form a new denomination, then there has to be an intent to form a new denomination has to be made. And I would give you dates, but because of the postponed General Conference, like all of these dates are invalid now. So there has to be some renegotiation of new dates for this. But the structure of the agreement, I believe, is still solid. Central conferences would be able to leave with a 2/3 vote. Annual conferences leaving there would have to be a motion on the floor of the annual conference. It would be 20%. So 20% of an annual conference would trigger a vote. And if an annual conference voted, then 50% of an annual conference, that would be the threshold. 50% of the annual conference then would have to vote to leave. Local churches leaving, the church council would determine that threshold. It could be a simple majority, or it could be a supermajority, somewhere in between. The church conference would be held under the supervision of the district superintendent. And then disaffiliation then would take place under certain disciplinary provisions as laid out in the protocol. So that's kind of the basic structure of the protocol. And again, you can see it's an orderly way for persons to be able to say, I'm not going anywhere, I'm going to stay right here in this denomination. Financial agreements, local churches, other than those who are disaffiliating, retain their property and assets. So if a local congregation is going to, one of the new expressions of Methodism, they would retain their property and assets. Trust clause would be transferred to that entity. If a church closes, the property would be subject to a lien by Westpath. The annual conference property, assets, liabilities are retained. And there was a financial aspect of this protocol, $25 million to be paid out over the quadrennium to a new emerging traditionalist denomination. $2 million was to be put into escrow for payments for other expressions that might emerge. And then, one of the other pieces, which seems very prophetic in this moment that we find ourselves, a $39 million set aside as an acknowledgement of the historical role of the Methodist movement in systems of systemic racism. And that money was to be able to strengthen ministry plans, training, programmatic priorities for dismantling racism. And of course, pension plans would stay in place. So that's kind of that's the financial aspect of the protocol. Another important aspect of the protocol laid out was a moratorium, that all complaints regarding LGBTQ persons would be held in abeyance. and through the adjournment of the first post-separation UMC General Conference. So those are kind of the broad overview of the legislation, which is before the General Conference. And they're going to obviously some dates going to have to be readjusted because of the season that we're in. But that kind of gives you a picture of where we are in the protocol. We're at a Paul and Barnabas juncture, right? That Acts 15 juncture. And the witness of Scripture demonstrates that God can use separation. He used separation in ministry partners like Paul and Barnabas and Mark to reach more people as the good news is shared in different ways. So, we're still inviting people to embrace it and to support it and to embrace the future and all of its transformational possibilities. If there was ever a moment for us to think about the future with a sense of hope and possibilities, I would submit to you it is for such a time as this. And my goal, my desire, my belief is, I have a desire to help people. How can we help each other get to our best futures? Because we all want to serve God. We all want to help people come to know Christ. We all want to share the good news. So how do we help people get to our best futures? And I think that's what the protocol accomplishes.
As I listened to you, I wish I'd counted how many times you said we didn't want to do harm.
Yeah.
And that's so important in our Wesleyan tradition.
Yeah.
And anyway,
yeah.
Well, this is a great overview for us to have. And as we do these segments on staying Methodist, this will really, I think, give us a good foundation to build on as we work our way toward General Conference.
The legislation is very well written. I certainly want to encourage people, to read the legislation. When I did these talks, I would always say, now I'm going to assume that you've already read the legislation. Okay, I want to invite you to read the legislation. And again, as I close, please read the legislation. I think that's the best way for people to get, greater clarity and understanding.
Exactly. Reverend Dotson, we thank you for your time, for sharing with us today. And thank you for your good work on this legislation, and certainly the work you do for our denomination. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Phil. My privilege.